Where was it? Shem Kasi? Because he sent it to me. What? My friend Zisha, I'll say in a minute.
I didn't have Shem. I had Mishnah Shlema.
Mishnah Shlema? He sent me something. Maybe that's what it
is. From Shlema, because I did a bit similar to Vav, I think.
Shlomo, he sent me also. I thought he sent me that. I didn't look. Simen Lamed Vav? Okay, let's get there. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, everybody say, big day. It's Hashem. Okay. So we're talking about rattles. What's the din of a rattle? Kama shaylas. Number one is, are you allowed to actually use one on Shabbos? Not for you and your wife, but for the child. You're allowed to shake it in front of the child. One shayla. Kliya miyuchad l'koil. The Alger, the Ramah brings down in Siman Shin Lamed Ches seems to say that you're not allowed to use a kliya miyuchad l'koil. You're not allowed to use a kli that's miyuchad to make a koil. That's a kliya miyuchad l'koil. One shayla. Then we have to establish what's the din. Is it muksa? Let's say we'll say it is aser. Says it muksa. Very negaya, because if it's not muksa and you just want to clean up, so you'll be able to just put it away. Maybe it'll be a kli shemach al yeser, and maybe we'll be allowed to move it l'tzarach guf makoymai. Maybe it's just totally in the svardim. Maybe a lot of things. Then another shayla is okay. Let's say muksa, not muksa. Let's say whatever we'll say. But now I want to bring it somewhere because it was in the makom or something. So do I have to worry? It's going to smack it. That's how it goes. The rattle shakes when you bring it. Are you allowed to shake it while you're bringing it? Another shayla. In general, about shayla is what happens when something happens there. Then one of the bigger shaylas, am I allowed to give it to the child? Maybe for me, it's maybe also. But what about for little Anshel? Does he have to have all of my chumras and my dinim, etc.? So those are that's some shaylas. Yesterday, we started speaking about if the rattle itself, if you're allowed to use on Shabbos. It does seem like it's us to use the rattle on Shabbos. That's what it seems like. The Ramah brings down over here, it's a kliya miyuchad l'koil. And it seems to be that you're not going to be allowed to shake the rattle in front of the baby on Shabbos. Yesterday we showed from the Kitzer. The truth is, I saw last night that the Shmir Shabbos in Tez Zayin Gimel, he says his example of a kli that's miyuchad l'koil. What's an example of a kli that's function is to make a noise? It's made for the purpose of making a noise. He says a rattle. So he says he writes it on top. It's not even like footnote. He writes on top that it's also, this is the normative halacha by the Shmir Shabbos that you're not allowed to shake a rattle in front of a child, bein if the child is crying, bein if the child is, it's time to make the child happy. So that's the example of the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Lamed Ches in Sif Aleph. Like we mentioned yesterday, is he talking that for a Sephardi? Could be its mutter, because the Sephardim maybe don't have this chumrah of the Ramah. Okay, but Al Kapanim for an Ashkenazi, the Ramah says you're not allowed to do what's a kli meyuchad l'koil. 3 reasons why. Either because, whatever the reason is, but they made it takana now. Either because you'll come to make a musical sound, or because it's something you'll come to fix it if it breaks, or whatever. Or stam, ovdin d'chayil. It's ovdin d'chayil. It's whatever the ovdin d'chayil is. I don't necessarily claim to understand it, but Mariel says we find ovdin d'chayil, and this is an example of one. It's Tiferes Yisrael. He says this is ovdin d'chayil. So the Maisa, they come to have here a good prop. And this is also on Shabbos. You won't be allowed on Shabbos to go like this to the child. This is a kliya miyuchad l'koil. It's a kliya miyuchad l'koil. That's how it comes out. The only thing is, and Rabbi Cooper, he brought from the Mishnah Berurah last night. He showed me a Mishnah Berurah in Siman Shin. Shalom Ches. Sivkat Temah? Oh, right in the beginning. So where? After the parentheses, vim yirtzel haka is kaf el kaf. So he's talking not about the kliya miyuchad l'koil. He's talking about the etzem miser of stam clapping. We said you're allowed to stam clap your hands. He's talking about that which Chazal asked, which is clap rhythmical beat or whatever. So he says, if you want to clap your hands in front of a child, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that? What would be the reason? You want to make the little guy happy, or you want to keep him quiet, or whatever. No, so are you allowed to do that on Shabbos? So Mishnah Berurah says, so go and do it with a shinoi. Go do it. You're allowed to say, Kalach Hayad. What does it say in the Chafetz Chaim? Chafetz Chaim saying that when there is each case, you have to, in each case, clapping your hands musically is also, I guess, when you're going to do it for the baby, it's not going to help to make the kid quiet to go, no, that doesn't make the kid quiet, because that's mutter to do even without a shinoi. Kanira, you're making some type of a rhythm and some type of a beat. So on that, the Chafetz Chaim says, if you want to do that on Shabbos, it's also to do that on Shabbos. Either baby's crying, and you want to keep him quiet. So what could you do? So the Chafetz Chaim says, do it with a shinoi. And then once you do it with a shinoi, it's mutter. Taina, what does it say in the Chafetz Chaim? That it's no heter when a child is crying to just all of a sudden make the kid stop crying. You're allowed to all of a sudden do drabbanans on Shabbos? No, so you have to do it with a shinoi. Sorry? No, a Falk, for example, holds that a child crying is a din of a chayla. Sorry? No, again, what? Sorry? No, if it's a heter, it's a heter. If it's chayla, chazal, we're in kaiser. What? Yeah, so that's anyways a bit of a problem, that in Hilchos, over there, in Hilchos Shittin Chav Ches, and Sif Yitzayin, the Maisa says that you're always supposed to try to do it with a shinoi anyways. So you should say that you're not allowed to use the rattle normal, you should have to do it with a shinoi. What? Well, you could do it with a shinoi. Come you can clap with a shinoi. You can shake a rattle with a shinoi. Here, yeah. The kid will laugh a lot more. Okay, whatever shinoi you're going to do like this, right? Here. It works. It just can't be bopping up and down now, but it works. Here, somebody will help. Okay, you should say, do it with a shinoi. Okay, Akapanim, I said yesterday to Rabbi Cooper on the phone, it's not a Raya Berurah, but it's the Pashtus anyways. It's Rabbi say, it's Maisa, we know the secret. Now I'll say it in public. I didn't say it yesterday, but we know the secret. When a child is crying, right? So what are the percentages? Okay, I think 70% of the time, if we're busy, we let him cry. The other 30% of the time, we stop him from crying for us, not for him. Why do you stop a child from crying? You stop the child from crying for yourself? Or you stop the child from crying for himself, herself, sorry. I think what's the norm is 70% of the time, if you're busy, you don't stop the kid from crying, okay? And the other 30% of the time, why do you stop the child from crying? For yourself. So to say that it's a tzorich of the child, there's no heter of, I'm bothered by that chayla to go and do some Isser D'Rabbanan. So the whole thing is tamua. It's vayal da'avdin chaval. We can't ask Rav Falki's in the olam ha'emes. I don't know. Maybe now it's nisgal the emes. I don't know. But the ma'isa, it's a dvar pella. It's a dvar pella to say that a child is a chayla klape him crying when that tzayich is a tzayich that nobody's mesiachis to b'chlal. So that's a vada davar pella, and therefore there's no heter to take a rattle. And that's what it says in the Shmir Shabbos. There's no heter to take a rattle and to shake it to make the baby stop crying. Now. There is a Mishnah Berurah. God, once you have that Mishnah Berurah open, I'll read that Mishnah Berurah. It's very interesting Mishnah Berurah. I had a hard time reading this Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah at the end, he goes on, he talks about the case. There's a Gemara in Eruvin that he's quoting. The Gemara talks about this, the Olam Chat, what this thing is. It's some type of a hollow, I don't know what, and there was a drop of water, and you put in the water, and when you do it softly or slowly, it makes a nice shena noise, a nice shena sound. Right? But if you do it faster, it makes a more angry sound. So the Mishnah Berurah says that you have this mayim bekli molin nekavim, it has these holes in it, or I don't know what, and it makes a nice sound. It says if you make a nice sound, that's aser, because that's like kimoya klei shir. That's gamkein kik klei shir. It says if the person is a chayli, then you're mekel. There is a heter over here of a chayla. If you have somebody who's a chayla, it seems that there is some type of heter. Tila David already is bothered. What is this heter? Like you're asking, Rabbi Leibovitz, when do we all of a sudden matad rabbanans for chaylim? Has to be klalim. But okay, for whatever reason over here, it seems to say that if you make this musical sound, I don't even know what this thing is, but if you take water and you make a nice sound, so then it's aser, unless it's a chayla, and then we're mekel for the chayla, because the chayla needs to sleep. It's important for a chayla to sleep, whatever this is. Then he says, but if you do it like hard, you throw in the water hard to wake somebody up, he says that's mutter. That's mutter. The lo yaveh kekli shir, because that's not like a klishir, because you're not doing it with a shena noise, with an emis, and adarab, you're doing it with an angry noise, and therefore it's mutter. Therefore it's mutter. I had shver. What's the Mishnah Berurah saying over here? Anybody have a kasha on this Mishnah Berurah? If you do it mamish like with a shena noise, so then it's mutter only for chayla. It's aser. It's like a harmonica. It's like a flute. But if you do it with an aggressive noise, So then it's mutter, and it's mutter even for a bari, because you're just waking somebody up. Anybody have a problem with that? It's a kliya miyuchad, right? It's right, it's right? Why is it not a kliya miyuchad? No, it's a hagufa, I don't know. What's up, Shah? What? Yeah, okay. So you're makavin somewhat. The Bir Lacha, in this long Bir Lacha over here, he somewhat asked this question, and he writes these words. Omnam yesh loymar, the hacha hu kli shu miyuchad lashum yakoil, chashinim lezeh. It's a little in the middle of the Bir Lacha, but he's saying Masha Enkein, what we spoke about in the Mishnah Berurah. He says mefurish, like you're saying, that it's not a kliya miyuchad to make a koil. It's just like an interesting thing. No, it's mamish very interesting thing. So then why is it that when I'm making a nice noise, it's aser? So he should just say it's aser because you're not allowed to make a musical noise. He doesn't say that. He says it's a klishir. Oh, salamai. No, the reason I'm being so emphatic about this is Kanira, this can help us maybe later to try to uptight what are called kli hamiyuchads and things like that. This Mishnah is a very interesting Mishnah Berurah. Sorry? It's Kanira, you know how to make a nice note. That doesn't make it a kli hamiyuchad. No, I mean, what's the case? Did he set it aside and he uses it all the time? What? Yeah. I hear, but so what did this fellow do? He used it for both things. He uses it for both things. Okay. It's something that might help us in the future. That's the only reason I'm mentioning it right now. Excuse me? I'm sorry? Yeah, and that won't be a kliya miyuchad. Okay. I saw one sefer, he says, from this Mishnah Berurah is muchach that a rattle is mutter. I don't even know where to begin. I don't have any kasha. What? Ma? Where? What? When? A rattle is a kliya miyuchad, and it has nothing to do with this Mishnah Berurah at all. Okay, so l'chayra, a rattle is aser on Shabbos, bein if the kid is crying, bein if the kid is not crying, as I come to. So I saw the Ber Moshe, the Debretziner, he has a different heter, why a rattle would be mutter on Shabbos. This is in the 6th volume of the Ber Moshe, in the 28th tshuva. He says, a new heter, a whole new heter. He says, if you have a kli, which isn't shaykh to comely day, a musical instrument, a musical sound. If you have a kli that the only time Chazal made this isser, he goes, I guess, with that Herzber of the Beis Yosef. Now, what's the isser of why is the Agar asering a kli miyuchad? Why you're not allowed to use a kli miyuchad, the koil? Because you're going to come to forget yourself and make a musical sound. That's kanira why, right? You'll come to forget yourself. That's what the Beis Yosef brings down. The Shabur brings that reason down. So he says, the only time they made this isser of kli miyuchad the koil is akama. It's a kli that can come into. You can comely day a musical sound. But he says mashen came with a rattle. It's just a crazy noise, and he writes over there. He says it doesn't have the ability to comely day a musical sound. That's what he writes. So besides, that's the reason why a rattle is mutter on Shabbos, because it doesn't have a musical sound, it's not, and it can't even come with a musical sound. So the whole reason why the Isser of Kliya Miyuchad L'Koil was because it can come with a musical sound, and this can't come with a musical sound. That's how there. And the plot thickens. So Rabbi Bergman last night, he told me Murder Gezach, and the truth is that you have a friend, Zisha, sent me another message, right? Another message. He sees he got what's it called? He got a shout out. Yeah, he got a shout out. So he wants now to be out shouted more and more. So he sent me like this. But the truth is, I'll tell him, you were preempted by Rabbi Bergman. Rabbi Bergman called up Rabbi Gross, the great Belzer Dayan, Rabbi Shammai Gross. And he asked him, what's going on with the Belzer Klapper? What's going on? That was what you asked him, right? You asked him, what's going on with the Belzer Klapper? Expecting to hear, well, they have one miyuchad for Shabbos, and maybe the Belders hold the vote in the Chayil, or expecting to hear, what else did we say? Did we say anything else? Right? So that's the Chayil. What? Or maybe this, thank you. That's right. Or maybe the Klapper, he's from Fez or from Meknes or whatever, Sephardic origin or something like that, the Masochist or something like that. Okay, so what did he say? He said a new heter, which I was sent by my new friend Zisha, and also Rabbi Bergman told me that he told him there's a sefer called the Mishnah Shlema, and in the 56th tshuva, he has a tshuva about this, and they say like this. They say that what is it? It's a leather something. Before you guys are donating one for Shabbos, it's not as simple as you thought, right? It's like a leather something, and against another leather something, it's 2-stick leather. And Memela, that noise is not something which can come lidei a musical sound. Sounds familiar, that there? It's Sound familiar? That was the teretz that the Ber Moshe, the Debretzina said, why? You're allowed to use a rattle on Shabbos. Because it's not the whole reason they asked the Kliyam Yuchad the Koil is because you're going to come to forget yourself and make a musical sound. So this cannot come lidei a musical sound. That's what he writes there. What? Come again? Well, so the truth is, it's only one out of the three answers, meaning there's three reasons why we ask her a Kliyam Yuchad the Koil. One is because you'll come to fix it. One is because of the chayil. It's only one of the three. Okay, but I guess that's the ikar. The Beis Yosef is the ikar. No, even though it's not the pshat that the Mariel says. Okay, but and not only that, Mistama later, maybe if the Mishnah Berurah would have had the Mariel inside later, maybe he would have went with that later. But anyways, that's what he says. But is this so pashit? So I tell you two reasons why it's not pashit. One of them I can't hold back on was Zisha's reason why this isn't pashit. Right, Zisha has a lot of faith in me. He writes, in Mishnah's thing, it's Baruch Hashem for you, Rabbi Bergman. I wouldn't have probably looked it up. But he writes, in Mishnah Shleima, Siman and Vav. And that's how he says over there, this reason why. And then he writes me a Meridik Maisa. He writes me that in Rosh Hashanah, in Erev Rosh Hashanah, can hear the Bachrim and Bells, what they do? They sleep there or something? They sleep over there, something like that, right? Well, in the building, yeah. So he writes to me that in Tafshin Ayin Gimel, Tafshin Ayin Gimel was like 8 years ago. He said there was a big story in Bell. I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this over. We don't know exactly who Zisha is, right? This is maybe from Belzer to Belzer in the mikveh, and it could be you're not supposed to be telling this to people. I don't know. But what should I tell you? I don't know. Maybe it's like off the Derek Belzer. We don't know. Who knows? Maybe, But he writes over there that there was a story in Tafshin Ayin Gimel that one of the Bachrim, somehow got into the room with the clapper, right? Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? Somehow he got into the room, and a different bacher, or his mamish, this is the most Belzer Lashon Hara that I've ever heard in my life. You need a piece of Yerushalmi for this, And the other bacher got it's like the shofar, which is unbelievable to me, got the shofar, and they made on Erev Rosh Hashanah, Mamish LaYehudim, a whole band over there. And they were clapping and dust and blowing the shofar and clapping. They had this is the Belzer Boys Choir, right? And they got kicked out, whatever. The whole story over there. They got into a lot of trouble. But what do you see from that Maisa? You see that the Maisa, I don't know if we need a raya. I don't know if we need one second. I don't know if we need a raya. But, the door clapper that everybody's talking about. So could you make that into a musical sound? Of course. Dun, 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 or anything, right? Could you make anything into a musical sound? Of course. So besides, is there any Havamim in the world that you can't take? But by a lot of leather, drums are made from leather. Where you come from, in Africa, no? Right? You're also from there, no? What do you think? When you take leather and you put it together and you make a clap, so you can't just hit it why not? Why can't that make a musical sound? And you see that the Belzer Boys Choir, they actually did it, right? So I don't, the whole thing is a Pelagadila. To say that that's the reason why it would be mutter, because you can't make it into a musical sound when you vada can make it into a musical sound. It's tamua moed. Wait, and to make it more tamua, who has a kasha on a rattle? Does anybody have a kasha? Anybody have a kasha on a rattle? No? Has anybody ever been to like a chasana or something outside Yerushalayim? Because Yerushalayim, there's no musical instruments, right? But have you ever been to a chasana and saw that guy with those ambas or whatever's going on over there, right? You know that guy with the whole dust? So what is that? What do you think he does? Every night he takes it from Anshul. His son is crying the whole with a rattle, right? And he's out playing at Durton. He's out gallivanting Durton, right? So I decide, could you make a musical sound with a rattle?
Yeah.
No, so if you can make a musical sound with a rattle, so the ganze teretz are up. It's gone. There's no such thing. So I decide a rattle is aser. The bells are clapper. I'm still he's a Sephardi, right? But a kavanah rattle's aser. It's dvar teima. What? He's saying that the noise of the leather can't make a beat of a drum. I don't understand that. The drum skin, but it has to be with a stick and whatever. Yeah, Rabbi say my hand is leather too. My hand is leather too, and it makes a sound, right? Why not? Why can't the leather sound make a clapping noise? Sarchi gadol? I don't know, but I know one thing. Rabbi said nobody in this room will ever be allowed into bells again. so what? It's an unnatural sound. Okay. I wonder who the bacher was, Rabbi Sai. But okay, let me get invited. That's still clear. Now, Rabbi Sai,
no one enjoyed that.
I hear, but you can't make. And you know what? You know what else? And you know what else? Nobody enjoys the clapping on the door knocker either. That's the example of Chazal, of a kli. The example of Chazal, of a kli amayuchad lekoil, is a door. It's not something which is, it's tamua. I don't know. Like okay, I don't know. And a rattle, you understand it by a rattle. By a rattle, it's one of the instruments. So I don't like that. And you know what else? I don't know. Because they asked it because of this. I don't know. I don't know. The whole thing sounds weird to me. Sorry? Shofar is something. A shofar you wouldn't be able to use as an instrument. That's an instrument, man. That's a musical instrument. That's it. It's interesting. Got it interesting. By shofar, it talks about if it's called a chachma and whatever. It's not interesting, but that's halacha. Halacha is borrowed that you're not allowed to stand. That's in Hilchos Shabbos. It's an interesting halacha. It's like a very interesting halacha. You don't have to stop the children on Rosh Hashanah from blowing shofar. It's like a weird halacha. Why not? And about an adult is not allowed on Rosh Hashanah unless it's for the purpose of the mitzvah. Not allowed to stop shofar. No, that's something else. I'm saying in general, you're not allowed on Shabbos to blow a shofar out our sugya, out banjo, out guitar. Now, let's go back. Let's go back. Now, so it's awesome. It's awesome. Now, I saw the Debretziner. He brings a different reason there, maybe why a rattle would be mutter on Shabbos. Why it would be mutter to shake the rattle in front of the child. And this reason, it's a little bit hard to fight with. It just is technically you can fight with it. He says, and especially if you go with the Aruch HaShulchan, he means the Aruch HaShulchan brings what the Tiferes Yisrael says, which is what the Be'er Lacha brings over here, and what we mentioned from the Hilchos Shabbos, that maybe the Isser, the ganze Isser, that's over in the Chayil. So he says, I felt gewähnt that the ganze Isser is also in the Chayil. So he says, so no, like I'll say it in my language, but you understand what's in the Chayil. Yeah. Okay. So we all don't understand. So dayenu, what's oved in the chayil? So this is not oved in the chayil. It doesn't look like smolachadik or whatever. It's oved in the baby. It's oved in the child or whatever. So then it wouldn't be nechlol and oved in the chayil. That's what he says. It's a little hard to fight with that because I don't understand oved in the chayil. So once you don't understand oved in the chayil, you lose your cheshik to try and argue with somebody who's saying this is not an oved in the chayil. So maybe somebody would come along. The God of Rav Shlomo Zalman, the Shemir Shabbos, I told you he asked a rabbi, brings down in a footnote over there in Tez Zayin in 16th parak in the third ois. He brings down there Rav Shlomo Zalman had it sound like this also, which I told you it's hard to argue on that. He had it sound if the chayil, so who's going to come along and be the giver and say, yeah, Uvdin the baby is also Uvdin the chayil. It's Uvdin the baby. It doesn't look choldik, right? Which you could hear for sure because I don't understand Uvdin the chayil. The only problem with that is that what? Obviously, is that we have two other reasons, and the Mishnah Berurah doesn't bring that as the reason, and the Beis Yosef doesn't bring that as the reason of the Chol. So to be meiko, to use a rattle on Shabbos, I think it's not kedai. That's l'chayr. That's l'chayr. Adkan is the first part. So you can't use a rattle on Shabbos. Oh, so now the second Shabbos. Is it muksa? And this is why we're learning it, right? It's like the hamshich of muksa, right? So the Maisa. Is it muksa on Shabbos? Very interesting sugya. I had the Be'er Lacha today, and I realized the Be'er Lacha is mamish a pella. And the truth is, they have all these things. Don't forget, it's not just this and the hand clapper, and they have that one. They still have it. When I was a kid, that like thing. The child rolls with it and pop. What's it called? It's called a popcorner. Yeah. So there you go. So then that thing, and a lot of times it gets stuck. Talking about it now, right? A lot of time it gets stuck and you have to click it and thus, So what? Yuchah for koil? Of course it's yuchah for koil. What? Do you have one? What? Does he know what I'm talking about? What are you talking about? It's yuchah the koil. That's the whole entire chapter of it. What? The popper, you don't know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about. So What? It's not musical. The kids, they love it. No. So's a rattle. So's the bell's clapper. So's the door knocker. So's everything, right? What are you saying? They're not normal, right? Abby, you with me on this one? No? They're not normal. No? Okay, whatever. Fine. It's a rattle muksa. I see I'm getting very sensitive reactions over here. But wait. Rabbi say. Is a rattle muksa? That's the shayla. Okay, that's a fair shayla. Okay, is a rattle muksa? So there's a very interesting Be'er Lacha over here. The Darlim see this Be'er Lacha in the Be'er Lacha in the beginning of Shinam Ches. This Be'er Lacha is incredible, and it's hard to. I'm sorry, not in the beginning. It's in the first sif, but there's a small Be'er Lacha over here, and he writes. It's after the very long one, and he says Indian, if it's mutter l'taltal laisa kli, if you have some, we just established a rattle is a kli. No, I'm going to use that. Okay? A rattle is a kli. Now, a rattle is, but what I'm saying from this point on is any kli am yuchel l'kol. This thing muksa on Shabbos, right? Nobody would realize this thing is muksa on Shabbos, right? So for sure, no one would think of it. So is this thing muksa on Shabbos? So where do you find the answer to this question, right? So the Biur Halacha says, ula inyan in mutter l'taltal laisa kli. Is it called the Kli Shemalachtal? Yes, it's a one-liner. Ayin Pri Megadim. Shemistapik is go and look in the Pri Megadim. The truth is, what? It's the Bramaskal also. Ayin Pri Megadim, that's mistapik in this. So the truth is, even if the Chafetz Chaim wouldn't have told you to go and look, you should look, because what's the tzad in the world that she's not muksa? Of course she's a Kli Shemalachtal, yes, right? Rabbi say, if you have something that you're not allowed to do in a Torah, I gave the example yesterday. Let's say you have a sieve, a sifter. So you're not allowed to minatayra, use it on Shabbos. So what is that? It's a klishma kol yeser. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Shimches. Let's say you have something you're not allowed to use midrabanan, not midiraisa. That also makes a klishma kol yeser. So this thing over here, ani mam and bemuna shleima, that there's an isser of the auger, and the Shulchan Aruch brings it down in us Ashkenazim. We hold like that, and that's an isser in the that if you use this on Shabbos, you're doing an Issa D'Rabbanan. No, so if you're doing this on Shabbos, you're doing an Issa D'Rabbanan. This is a Kli that is Malachta to do an Issa D'Rabbanan. So it's a Kli Shemachta. Yes, sir. Let's hold off on it. So it's a Kli Shemachta. Yes, sir. And if it's a Kli Shemachta Yeser, so what could be the suffix of the Pri Megadim? So even if the Biur Halacha wouldn't say ayin Pri Megadim, you'd have to be ayin in the Pri Megadim to know it's a suffix, because there's no suffix. There's no suffix. Of course, it's a Kli Shemachta Yeser. But now it's Mamash Merit Gezach. Chafetz Chaim, he wanted to give us another mitzvah. You know, that's what Rosh Zalman, when they asked Rosh Zalman, why is it Kosh Baruch Hu give us so many mitzvahs? Rosh Zalman said, what do you mean? Ivan puts on his shoes in the morning. Ivan takes a shower, hopefully in the morning. But you're doing it anyways. So Hashem said, you put your right shoe on first, then your left shoe, and then you wash your head first, and then your right arm, and your left. Why? Because you're going to do it anyways. Hashem just wanted to give you more mitzvahs. Just a B, you're doing it anyways. So here, this Pri Megadim, you're anyways going to have to look up because it makes no sense. Of course, it's a Kli Shemachta Yeser. So the Chafetz Chaim wanted to give you an extra mitzvah. So he said, Ayin Sham, and now there's a mitzvah, L'shmoy L'divrei Chafetz Chaim. So let's look it up. You look inside the Pri Megadim, and it gets worse. It gets worse. It gets mamish worse. It says, what's my tzad? Why should a clap or a rattle, why should it be? I'm not sure. Maybe it's not muksa. He says, why? Because there's lavush. What's this lavush? So he says there's lavush in Shin Ches Sif Mem Tes. And the lavush has it's sad that when you have something that's al chumras, when you have something that's al chumras, so then we don't say it's a Kli Shemachta Yeser. Like you read this Pri Megadim and you're struck with a pella. The Mishnah, what's the lavush talking about? The lavush is talking about taking a broom on Shabbos, so you're allowed to move around the broom. Now, in our world, a broom is not muksa. In the world before our door, not our door, but in the world before, I don't know, before this century, well, not this century, even last century, whatever, but there was a big nidin, is a broom muksa? What was the nidin if a broom is muksa? Because there's a ganze machlekes if you're allowed to sweep a floor on Shabbos when there are other floors in the city that have dirt floors. That was the big world war in the time when there were no tiled floors or half-tiled floors and whatever. The Shulchan Aruch held, and that's what we'll learn in Mitzvah Shem, maybe also even this man, hopefully. But in Shin Lamed Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch holds that you're allowed to sweep the floor on Shabbos. Maybe depends if there's roiv tiled floors or not. But if you have a tiled floor, but you're allowed to sweep your floor on Shabbos. So what's a broom? A broom is a kli shemalachta leheter. It's a kli whose function is to do heter, to clean the house. The Ramah holds not like that. The Ramah holds not like that. The Ramah shita is that a broom is a kli shemalachta le'isser. Excuse me, I shouldn't say it like that. The Ramah holds you're not allowed to use a broom on Shabbos. Why? Because the Ramah made Xera. Even if you have a tiled floor, but we don't let you sweep a tiled floor, until you might come to sweep an untiled floor. So therefore, there's an Issa D'Rabbanan for the Ashkenazim to sweep a floor on Shabbos circa 1900. And today it's not Negeah because every place is tiled, and the only place it is Negeah is outside, and then the Tak is an Issa to use the broom outside. Okay. Over there, there's a Lavush. The Lavush in Shin Ches, he says like this. He says, it's true that we aser, sweeping a floor, Otto, you're going to come to sweep a untiled floor. It's true. But says the Lavush, but it's not muksa. It's not muksa. He says, why? Because we don't make muksa on chumras. That's what the Lavush says. That's what the Lavush says. Adkan. Okay, Grata, why wouldn't we make on chumras? Okay, I don't know, because klisha malachta le'isr, I hear under Isis, I hear under Rabbanans, maybe on chumras not, I don't know, later, something like that. Maybe if it's exeris kalim, it makes a lot more sense. You know, if you learn haksaz das, so, I don't know, maybe you could say, I is makatze my das, it's a chumra, I don't plan on doing it, so it is a kitzui das. Okay, but if you learn it's Xeris Kalim, maybe they only made Xera on things. But the Maisa, it all doesn't start. Nothing here starts. Because the Mishnah Berurah in Shinches, in Sivkat in Kuf Samech Gimel, Shinches Sivkat in Kuf Samech Gimel, he says that Lefi the Ramah, that holds that you're not allowed to sweep the floor on Shabbos. So he says, so a broom is a Klisha Malachta Eliezer. A broom is a Klisha Malachta Eliezer. So what's going on? The Biur Halacha says, I'm not sure what's the din of a rattle. Why am I not sure what's the din of a rattle? Because the Pri Megadim is Mesupik. Why is the Pri Megadim Mesupik? The Pri Megadim is Mesupik because Levush, when it came to a broom, he said that it's maybe not a Klisha Malachta Eliezer, right? But the Mishnah Berurah doesn't hold like that. Mishnah Berurah held that a broom is a Klisha Malachta Eliezer. So what's going on over here? It's called a klotz kasha. This is called the klotz kasha. Why is it a klotz kasha? Does anybody want to answer? It's the klotz kasha, right? No, it's a klotz kasha. So there's two chedushim, thank you, Bashir. There's two chedushim in the levush. I'll just speak it out. It's a davar pasha, but it's very important. There's two chedushim in this levush. One of them is what everybody argues on, and one of them everyone agrees to. What are the two chedushim in the levush? The levush first has a chedush that on chumras, you don't become a klisha malachta li'eser. That could be that everyone agrees to that. That makes sense, like I said before. Deraisa, you become a klisha malachta li'eser. Drabanan, if it's a nisa drabanan, you become a klisha malachta li'eser. You could have heard chumra, maybe also you become a klisha malachta li'eser. If I'm machmir, part of my chumra is to accept this as an iser. You could have heard not like that. You could hear that that's considered not a klisha malachta li'eser because it's not a gzeira that Chazal made a takana on this item or something like that. Okay. That's one chiddush in the levush. I can agree with that. But then there was a second chiddush in the levush. Comes again the levush. And he says, sweeping the floor on Shabbos according to the Ramah, what is that? So the levush said, that's a chumrah. The Ramah was machmir. Who says the Ramah was machmir? The Ramah wasn't machmir. The Ramah held it's aser. Not that the Ramah held like, there's a tzad mutter, tzad aser, and I'm being machmir. The Ramah held aser. If the Ramah held it's aser to sweep the floor on Shabbos, is that a chumrah? It's like any other issa d'Rabbanan. So it's like any other Yisr Rabbanan. Of course, it's a Klisha Malachta Yisr. So now, all the Achreinim argue on the Levush in the time of Radin. I mean, today it's not again, but in the time I call it Radin site, yeah. So then they all held that a broom is a Klisha Malachta Yisr. It's not true because you're not allowed to sweep the floor on Shabbos. Okay, but that doesn't mean they argue on the Levush in his first. Chumra won't necessarily have a din of a klisha malachta li'eser. Is that crystal clear before we go back there? That's what you meant, yeah? That's a davar pasha. So now let's start again. Okay, now comes again the Biur Halacha and Lashmaya to the Biur Halacha, and he says, what's the din of a kli amiyuchad l'koil? A kli amiyuchad l'koil. Go and look in the Pri Megadim, and you'll see the Pri Megadim doesn't know because he doesn't know what's the din of chumras. Kimavur in the levush. Now we have to start with the new shaila. What's the new shaila? Why in the world is this called a chumrah? Why in the world is it a chumrah to use a kli amayuchad l'koil? Again, if we hold it's also ani mam b'munishleima that a rattle is also to use on Shabbos. So if you believe that a rattle is also to use on Shabbos, so then it's l'chayra pashit that it's an issa d'Rabbanan. If it's an issa d'Rabbanan, it should be muksa. Right? That's where all things are pretty good. Okay. So now, how are you going to find the answer to this? So again, the Biur Halacha said ayin in the Pri Megadim. What's this Pri Megadim? So I'll tell you what it says in the Pri Megadim. The Biur Halacha in the previous Biur Halacha. Now it's going to explain something in the previous Biur Halacha, which was also very, very strange. Now it makes sense. The Biur Halacha in the previous Biur Halacha, in the very long Biur Halacha, he brings down finally this Tiferes Yisrael that you keep on hearing about. The Tiferes Yisrael has an awesome chiddush, unbelievable chiddush. The Tiferes Yisrael says this poor guy is outside of his house. And where is he? He's like in Africa over there, and they have these big fences around the houses and everything, right? And there he is outside, and he can't get in. He can't get in, and he's knocking, and it's not helping. Now there's a bell. All he has to do is ring the bell, and then people are going to hear him. But he's banging, and it's also, and they have those lightning storms there. Pachad Chadim, I once saw, yeah. And he's banging and banging. Nobody hears him. So the Tiferes Yisrael says, what's he going to do? He's going to sleep outside. It's also not the good neighborhoods and things like that. And what if the verdict would have been that he was not guilty? Right? So besides, there he is standing outside. And how's he going to get in? So the Pharisee Yisrael says, look, Lamaisa, ring the bell. Ring the bell. So the Pir Allah says, what? Ring the bell. Because if you're allowed to do an Issa D'Rabbanan so that you can get a good night's sleep, a mask him, you're going to suffer in a mask and this. Where do you ever have to do an Issa D'Rabbanan because you're going to sleep outside? What is this business? It's an Issa D'Rabbanan. It's an Issa D'Rabbanan. Now there's one chalik of the Tiferes Yisrael, which is something that Mitzvah Hashem we have to come back to, which is maybe a bell is even worse than what we're talking about. Maybe a bell is a kli shir. And then whatever I'm going to say now is not going to work. Okay, but let's say a bell is not a klei shir, and the most a bell is a kli amiyuchad l'koil. So now, but the Bialacha says, but the kli amiyuchad l'koil is an issa d'Rabbanan. You know, let's stop doing issa d'Rabbanan for the purpose of being able to have a good night's sleep. What's this about? So he goes on and he says, and at first he wants to say, you know what? Maybe even the Shulchan Aruch holds of this. He says he has a raya, maybe because the Rif doesn't bring it. He explains it's no raya, the Rif doesn't bring it. He says, okay, look, L'maisa, the steamest of the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam is that they don't bring the sister of Kli Amiyuchad L'Kol. So now we could talk. You know, there's a Rambam, Shulchan Aruch that don't seem to bring this sister. So now we could talk. He says, you know what? I have a new tzad of this Isser of Kliya Miyuchad L'Koil, that it's something that, which we mentioned this room many times already, but I have a new tzad what the Isser is. He says, if the Isser is Tam Gzeira, it's checkmate. There's an Isser on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use the Kliya Miyuchad L'Koil because you're going to come to make a Klei Shir, because you're going to come to fix it, this, that. So then there's nothing you could do, it's checkmate. He says, but you know what? Maybe it's Uvdin D'Choil. It's Uvdin D'Choil. He says, if I could show you the whole Isser of Kliya L'Koil, I could show you in Uvdin D'Chayil. So he says, look, in Shin Lamed Gimel, we find Uvdin D'Chayils are mutter b'mokim mitzvah. And side by side, ein l'cha mitzvah gadol mizayis to be able to have a normal night's sleep and to not have to sleep outside with all that chavraya does and the chavraya does. You know, so side by side, let me show you, says the Heilig Abir Lacha, that this is an Uvdin D'Chayil. If it's Uvdin D'Chayil, then it'll be mutter b'mokim mitzvah, and that's the pshat in the Tiferes Yisrael. So he says, how do I know it's an Uvdin D'Chayil? He has two rayas. Raya number one, he says, is the Hilchos Shabbos, which I mentioned. Hilchos Shabbos says that they used to have this, that there was a door klopper, you know, they would knock on the door. And then there was a second one that they used just for Shabbos. There was two separate ones. He says, what's that? Mazeh v'al mazeh. If you're not allowed to use the door knocker on Shabbos, what does it help to make this one a special one? You know, it's the special car that we drive to Shul on Shabbos with. It's a special car, you know. So what's that going to help? So he says, if you go Gzeira Dik, it doesn't make sense. He says, if you go Uvdin D'Chayil Dik, you know this answer already. If you go Uvdin D'Chayil Dik, Dik, we know that if it's Uvdin D'Chayil, then if you have a Kliya Miyuchad for Shabbos, it's no longer an Uvdin D'Chayil. Gada, somebody told me that in Germany, the German minig used to be, there was such a thing, that there were two clappers on the door. And there was one for Shabbos and one for the weekday. That's what someone told me. So you see that the minig taka, so he says, what's the hasber in this minig? The Tais of Shabbos? Uvdin D'Chayil. Uvdin D'Chayil. Okay? If that's the case, says the Bialacha, we're in business. Now it's not such an aveira what the Tiferes Yisrael is saying. He held it's Uvdin D'Chayil, since it's Uvdin D'Chayil, Uvdin the mitzvah, you know, Uvdin D'Chayili, not becoming sick, Uvdin the having a good night's sleep, Nish Gefährlich, B'mokim mitzvah. Then he says, I have a second raya that it's Uvdin D'Chayil from the Pri Megadim, Ayin Sham. Which Pri Megadim? Our Pri Megadim. What does he mean? This Pri Megadim. So what does he mean? He says the Pri Megadim, he doesn't speak this out, but this is what he means. The Pri Megadim is misupik if a Kliya Miyuchad L'Koil, if a rattle is a Kli Shemalachta L'Yisr, if it's Muksa. So the Bialacha is asking Akasha, what is his question? Of course it's a Kli Shemalachta L'Yisr. He's asking Akasha. Of course it's a Kli Shemalachta. If it's a regular Gzeira, of course it's a Kli Shemalachta L'Yisr. So how in the world does the Bialacha, does the Pri Megadim have a suffix? So the Pri Megadim, it's like not a malachta yeser, it's like a chumrah. This is also like a chumrah. So he says, what do you mean? Why are you calling this a chumrah? It's a regular gzeira d'Rabbanan. So this is what the Bir Halacha means. It must be that the Gadim was understanding that this thing is not the regular shvus. It's not a shvus. It's a chumrah. Uvdin D'Chayil is a different type of a concept. Run-of-the-mill shvasim. K'moy we find in Uvdin D'Chayil as a heter of mitzvah. K'moy that we find Uvdin D'Chayil as a terim when you have things that are miyuchid, whatever. So now we have another thing in Uvdin D'Chayil. It's like considered like a chumras chazal. It's not considered like a shvus. So the mela, if you see that the Prima Godim is willing to accept that maybe a rattle is taka, not a Kli Shemach Yisr, you can accept that a rattle is only Yasser Atzov Din Dechayel. So if the only way to get into the house is by shaking your rattle, so then maybe, says the Bialacha, you could be saying Mechandis to Pharisee Yisrael. That's Adkan. So Akopanim, that's what comes out. Tachlis Karet. So what is a rattle? So the answer, what's the Tachlis? After all that, Rabbi Spire, you asked the question. So what's a rattle? Is a rattle muksa, yes or no? What's the answer? Tachlis, after that, I just gave you a whole share. What's the answer? The answer is the Prima Godim says, I don't know. And he's only saying, I don't know. The Prima Godim doesn't know. I don't know, right? I don't know. And he's only saying, I don't know in the tzad of Din Dechayel. According to the reasons that are brought down in the Mishnah Berurah, is a rattle muksa? Yeah. Because it's a regular Xer. So according to two reasons, it's Vade Muksa. According to the third reason, I don't know. So what's halacha l'maisa? Should you be moving a rattle for no reason on Shabbos? What's the answer? No. But the plot thickens. So today I looked in the Muksa book, So in the back over there in Rabbi Badner's book, he has, all the different things. He has an index. So I looked up rattles. So over there, he sends you to page 26. I remember because you gave up. But he sends you over there to page 26. And over there on page 26, he has a whole thing about rattles. Over there in the footnote, he brings down that there's a Yerushalmi in Beya. He brings I saw a tuck inside. The Yerushalmi in Beya says a rattle is muksa. A rattle's muksa. That's what he says. Upstairs, he writes, a rattle's not muksa. It's good kasha. And the bottom, he brings the Yerushalmi in Beya that says a rattle is muksa. Upstairs, he's Kli Shemach Yisr. Upstairs, he says a rattle's not muksa. So on the bottom, he explains. I asked this question to the Gadol Ador, Moshe Feinstein, and Moshe said that, we know there's a klal. There's a klal that if something is miyuchad for a child and an underage minor, he's an underage minor, this little critter, right? He's called 2 years old. So what are you saying? It's a kliya miyuchad for an underage minor. So for him to do everything on Shabbos is mutter. So Rav Moshe has his klal, you all remember from last month, that he talked there, in that sefer is where he wrote the tshuva, Rav Moshe said this klal, that when you have something which is miyuchad for a child, so then it's not considered a Kli Shemach Yisr, it's considered a kliya miyuchad for someone who's allowed to use it. So therefore it's called the Kli Shemach Yisr. So what's the kasha? What's the actual kasha? The Yerushalmi. But the Yerushalmi says not like that, right? So Moshe, he asked Moshe, but what about the Yerushalmi? So he said, no, the Yerushalmi is talking about that the rattle is the parent's rattle. The parents rattle that, and the child is, he's the benefactor, the beneficiary of this pa'ula. But derech agav, Maimar Muzgar, derech agav, what do you see in this Yerushalmi? Are you allowed to use a rattle on Shabbos? No. And first you're Yerushalmi now. You're not allowed to use a rattle on Shabbos. And is a rattle muks on Shabbos? Well, it depends. If it's the parent's rattle, then it's a Kli Shemach Yisr. If it's the child's rattle, I don't understand this so much, but if it's the child's rattle, so then Rav Moshe at least allowed it's a Kli Shemach Yisr. Now that itself, if you remember when we learned muksa, was a world war. If we look at the child, or do we look at the owner and we look at the etzim chefts of the tachlis of it is so this is a world war. If you want the names and faces when it comes to a rattle, I mean, back then we spoke big barichas about this. If you want the names and faces, at least in over here, so the Shmir Shabbos in Chaf Ha'arach Tes, he says it is muksa. That's an old fight. I'm just specific. If I had to touch up, what is this? Is this our toy or is it the child's toy? Rattles are there. What's the rave usages of rattles? What? Well, my youngest is 5. I'm not used to the rattles. What's the Misa? What? The child? Yeah, the child? What? No, that's not right. I brought it to go like this to the kid. What? No, that's not a cash. I also buy everything in the world you buy for the child that has muksa to it and isurim to it. It's because I'm buying it for the child. Sorry? Why do I have a thermometer to put into the child or whatever? I don't know. That doesn't matter. No, that's not the conveyor. The question is who's the user? That's Pashut. But it's totally in the user. It's totally what? Oh, I was thinking something like that. I was afraid to say it because I don't have the newborns anymore, right? But I thought that it's a newborn, there's a newborn, and it's the parents, right? You go like this to the kid, right? If the child is a little bit older, he's already 12 or 14 or whatever. So then it's probably at that point you give the kid to do it, right? I don't know, like that. I could put him the whole chiddush for Moshe is a chiddush. Darf das wissen, der ganze Chiddush, was Moshe sagt, das ist der ganze Chiddush. When Moshe sagt, der ganze Chiddush. Nicht the other Paiskim, the other Paiskim don't all necessarily hold of this with Moshe. It's not, what? No, the Bir Allah is talking about a Kliyam Yuchel. It's not talking about a rattle. No, I am using an example the whole day of a rattle. You can't blame that on the Be'er Locha. You can only blame that on Kallus. Sorry? So Rabbi Nissim asked me yesterday, great question. I never thought of this question. He asked me yesterday, you remember last man, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvaroi. He asked me last man, you remember last man, that the Sfardim, Achenu b'nei Sfardim, they held that if you have something that has no to'elis, so then that's muksa, right? The example of Chazal was a ball. Okay, the example of Chazal was a ball because it's not a tayelis of a davar that has a chshivas to it or whatever. It's not a tzarich, it's a shtus. It's a tzarich shel shtus. We gave the example of adjuim, if you remember, the apricot pits and whatever, all that. So they hold that's muksa amiti. It's not a kli bichlal. So remember last month there was a tzad that the Sfardim hold that every kli, which is a toy, is considered a shtus and whatever, and therefore every toy, even if it's manufactured, might not be a kli shel heter, it might be mamish a shtus. The truth is, by a rattle, I think that's not true. Because a rattle is the one thing that if you see already, it's something that's such a tail. And Yerushalmi already have rattles, and it's something that's so normal to do, to be mashte katinaik, or falkat kidei kach wants to say you could be over under abundance in order to. So nice, it's something that does have a tayelis. So some of the Sfardim and the Ashkenazim on this are not going to be equal, and the Fakir, the Sfardim are going to hold it's mutter gomer, because the Sfardim are going to hold that there's no isser of a kliyam yuchel l'koil. But they don't have to worry that maybe the Sfardim will consider this to be muksa gomer. That's what I would think. Sorry? I just answered it. That Dusham, they'll agree. I just brought a riot. But it's not muksa. They'll learn that it's making like a niggin or something like that. Thank you. Very good. Yeah. Rabbi Siegel's right. Yerushalmi could hold like ula and chanami. What? Why not?
So then, everything is being managed so claim you don't even have to do it.
Okay, again, I'm not bringing from the Yerushalmi. We've already established that a kliyam yuchel l'koil is now considered an isid rabbanan. I don't need Yerushalmi for that. I just need that Yerushalmi doesn't consider it to be the child's item. I'm not bringing the Yerushalmi to explain that it's usher. I'm just using the Yerushalmi that when it's usher, the Yerushalmi can hold for its reason, I can hold for my reason, whatever. It's true what you're saying, Taka. But now I see it's, wait, why is Yerushalmi saying it's usher? It's something that's miyuchad for a child. I see not like Ramosha. That's what we were saying. So then on that, Ramosha answered that it's talking, which is a hard thing. I mean, again, like you're saying, maybe it depends what type of, so Allah l'maisa tachas grab. If the rattle is for a baby mamish, everyone should agree it's muksa. If the rattle is for a 2-year-old, you can play with it, you can play with the child. That's l'chayra. But akapanim again, to actually rattle, to do the rattle kite, that's l'chayra, a problem of isser of using a kliyam yuchad l'koil, and so far you still have to get that. You got to get that Belzer fellow, the Sephardi guy, to come into your house and to shake it in front of the child. That's the chayra number 2. What's the third child? Third child is okay, but now I'm about to put down the baby. I'm about to put it down, and there's a rat, and he's sleeping, and it took how many hours to get the baby? My daughter, now she wouldn't go to bed. It's 1:30 in the morning. 1:30 in the morning, she wouldn't go to bed. And I explained to her, I got alert in the morning, nothing, wouldn't go to bed. And so what could you do? So what do you do? What do you do? Is there anything to do? So what do you do? Well, so we decided to take her for a drive. We took her for a drive. And we drove, not working, not falling asleep. And we drove all the way to, it was in those days, there was no bacon. So you had to go and there was no roads in those days. There was so there we were on the horse and buggy. We drove all the way to, I think we drove all the way to Telstone or whatever. We drove there and we drove back. And it was a long drive back then. Right? We drove back and drove there. It took like an hour. It's like 2:45 in the morning already. You come in and then finally she's falling asleep and she's already out cold. This is before they had those. Nowadays you have those very easy chairs. What are they called? The car chairs and they're very easy. Those days it was like you had to have 3 people and help you up. It was very hard for my wife. And finally we got up. I lived on the 5th floor. We got up and quiet. Everything was quiet. And it's perfect. Right to the bed. And we took her out and put her down. And right there was a rattle on the bed. There's a rattle inside the, why are you laughing? It was a terrible story. I have nightmares about this, right? and put it down, it was perfect, put it down, and you heard, wah! Okay, so what do? You got to move that rattle. Now you understand why I said that story. Now you have to move that rattle. So now what is she? The worst case scenario that we're saying now. What's the worst case scenario? That she's a kli? No, not my daughter, the rattle. What, the rattle, by me, the rattle's also a she, right? So what is she? She's a kli, shemalachta elieser, right? Right, if by the goyim a he could be a she and a she could be a he, then by me a rattle can sign a she. Okay, good. But I'll go a rattle. So what do you have to do? In the rattle. So that's a kli shemalachta elieser. Let's start what? Good, Gavaldik, whatever. I need the marker, right? But the shaila is, now when I pick it up, do I have to pick it up like this? Like this, very, very carefully, because I don't want it to shake the noise, because now you're going to be making a noise on Shabbos. So that's the new shaila. So what are you going to answer? And we'll end with this shaila. I still have more shailas. We didn't still get to it, but that I'll start with tomorrow. We still didn't get to the shaila, which is, can I give the child and let the child do it? Okay. But now, one last shaila. Am I allowed, can I have Sabina and that child? Can I give it to the child and let the child play with it himself? But we have a shaila. Can I take it out? I can move it because it's a klisha makdal. Yes, sir. As long as I'm doing it. Okay. But now, when I take it out, do I have to take it out very idle and make sure that it doesn't make the noise? So what does everybody right away say? They say, ooh, it's a psik reisha, deloy nichale, because I don't want that noise for sure not. And it's definitely not issa deraisa, it's only derabanan. Right, so if that's the reason, then it's aser. We all psik reisha deloy nichale on the derabanan is aser. Nikuda. I love how this gets thrown around in the Velt like it's the Aseres Adibris. Right? No, it's more than Aseres Adibris. It's like, it's a mamish. People throw this around. No, it's psik reisha, deloy nichale, derabanan, migu, naparnat. It's no shaykhs. We hold psik reisha deloy nichale on a drabanan is forbidden. It's Hashem. We're going to learn by now. We'll prove that or whatever. But that's how we hold. We hold like that. So now, but that sounds like wild. Is that true? You can't pick up this thing. So here you have a most interesting piece of our Jewish history. A most interesting piece. Let me finish with this. There's a Taz in Yeridea. The Taz in Yeridea, he talks about the original bells. And he talks about there were bells on the Paroiches and there were bells on the Sifrei Torah. And they used to open up the Sifrei Torah. They would take out the Sefer Torah, and the Sefer Torah had bells, and it would clap and shake, and it would make all types of lovely noises. Why would they do that? Because then people hear it and they stand up. It was a Gavaldic expression of Kavod Torah. People hear it, they stand up, so it's a Gavaldic Kavod Torah. Okay. So this, the Taz says, is a minig that's against halacha. The Taz in the 1600s in Krakow, he made a big rash in the world. This was the minig always, right? It's the minig always. The truth is, till today, if I'm not mistaken, Chayna ben Esfardim have this, right? Till today, because these guys, they kept the same stuff since the time of Avram Avinu and Terach and everything. There's right? So they have the same exact thing. They have the bells the same way it was. And it works. It works, right? The second they open up, you hear, right? Everybody stands and everybody this. That's how it goes. So the Maisa, the Taz says, there's halacha also. This is against halacha. Kavod Torah, there's a bezoyin Torah, says the Taz. What are you doing? You're being goyver nashmas koil. What are you doing? When you open up the Arna Kodesh, the bells are flopping and clapping and dust. And when you take out the Sefer Torah, it's making all that musical noise. Terrible. Shemish Shemayim, the Taz says, uproot the minute. Comes again, the Magen Avram. Magen Avram, where is the Magen Avram from? Kallus. And the Magen Avram, he says, don't know why the Taz is screaming. Now, the Magen Avram is very hard to read. I'm going to read the Magen Avram based on the Graz, the Baal Tanya, and the Tilil David. That's where my understanding of the Magen Avram comes from. It's a very hard Magen Avram to read. But basically, the Magen Avram has two ikar tainas of why this minig is okay. Okay. First thing he says is, look, what are we dealing with bichlal? We're dealing not with a klei shir. We're dealing with a kli ameyuchad l'koil. Okay, that's already a very big statement. It's a very big statement. Is that so pashit that a bell is a kli ameyuchad l'koil, or maybe it's a klei shir? Okay, but that's the first thing. That's his starting point. The starting point of the Magen Avram, of the Rav of Kallus, is it's not a kli shir. We're not dealing with a musical instrument. A worst thing we're dealing with is a kli ameyuchad l'koil. He says, okay, but a kli ameyuchad l'koil is forbidden. He says, yeah, but a kli ameyuchad l'koil is not aser b'makom mitzvah. Now, what's that? Mazeh vel mazeh. What's that all about? Okay, so I guess he's going off in the chayil. I guess. Okay, it's interesting because, we found out about Uvdin Dechol from a Hilchos Shabbos, from a Bir Allah. Okay, sorry? Come again? That what? That's something else. That's also Lo Shchiach and the Hilchos and whatever. But you mean B'Makom Mitzvah, we could be Saimich on the sheet of Hilchos. Okay, the Machzor Shekel, I told you, it's a hard Magen Avram to read. But okay, so forget reasons. I don't want to get involved. It's a difficult Magen Avram to read. He does say one thing. He says, if it's a Kli, Hamiyuchad L'Koil, B'Makom Mitzvah, we could be Mekel. What exactly is the Hezber? Rabbi Balon is saying it's not else the way I'm saying it. It's else that we're Saimich on the sheet of Chaysvis, B'Makom Mitzvah. I'm telling you, maybe it has to do with it, but it doesn't matter. He says those words. The reason is not so imperative right now. But he does say that if it's a Kli, Hamiyuchad L'Koil, no, so it's very important because the Magen Avram is never going to be mekel if it was a musical instrument. That no way, because we're not saimich on the taisis if it's a musical instrument. But that's the first reason the Magen Avram says why this minig, you can keep this minig. Because it's a Makom Mitzvah. It's a Makom Mitzvah. Then he goes on and he says another thing. He says, and second of all, it's Eina Miskavin. It's Eina Miskavin. He says, what do you mean it's Eina Miskavin? He says, a guy taking out the Sefer Torah, that's what he's thinking about. He's taking out the Sefer Torah. He's not, he's the guy opening up the Aron HaKodesh. This is my chance to shine and whatever. And he thinks like, for sure his wife's about to go into labor and whatever. So V'mela, Gewaldik, that's why he's doing it. But he's not thinking. He's not thinking. He says, you're going to tell me what? But when the guy put on the bell at the gemeint, he was thinking with all the kavanas and that this is going to ring. Who cares? Who cares? That's what he did. And that it's not totally in what he did. The Taz was obviously learning that if somebody put it on there with the purpose of clapping and making sounds and whatever, that's called you're having kavana. He says that's not called kavana. Wait, slow. So the whole Magen Avram is weird. That line, what does that mean? It's a psik reisha. It's nichale because you put it on for a reason or whatever. He calls it Eina Miskavin. He makes like nish wissendik. He makes like he doesn't know the whole sugya of psikrashas Eina Miskavin. So then this is the biggest side. This Magen Avram is the biggest side. The Magen Avram is learning that in our sugya, when you say the word Eina Miskavin, you mean something totally else. In a normal sugya, when you're done, if I'm digging the floor and Eina Miskavin, something happens, then you have the sugya is psikrashas Eina Miskavin, whatever. Here, Chazal aser a kli amiyuchad lekoil. Why? Normally, we don't care about the why. Here we care about the why. Chazal aser a kli amiyuchad lekoil. Why? Because you're going to forget yourself, let's say, and make a musical sound. Let's go with that reason. Because you're going to forget yourself and make a musical sound. And Chazal didn't aser unless you have what the reason they asered was. Chazal said, don't make a kli amiyuchad lekoil because you're going to make a musical sound, because you're going to come to make a musical sound. Of them zok the Magen Avram. But let's say I'm just agov. I'm taking out a Sefer Torah. I don't even care about the sound that's taking place. So then I say, you're not going to come to make a musical sound. In other words, this is not mitzad Eina Miskavin, the regular rules of Eina Miskavin of Psikresha. He means the Chazal were only worried of a kli miyuchad lekoil when we're afraid you could lose yourself. But that's only if you know what you're doing and you're planning on doing what you're doing. Chazal answered like this, if you want to say in one sentence. Chazal said, don't make a kli miyuchad, don't go and use a kli miyuchad lekoil because you're going to lose yourself. So what if I'm not using a kli miyuchad lekoil? I'm not trying to make a coil, so then you can't lose yourself. So Chazal didn't answer that case. That's why he took the Magen Avram. What? Let me finish the shir. I'm coming in today. I'm coming upstairs. But it's over. The shir is over. It's already 4:52. I just wanted to finish this sentence. So this Magen Avram is a big chiddush. The Mishnah Berurah says, first of all, maybe a bell is a Kli Miyuchad L'Shir, and even the Magen Avram won't be mekel if it's a Kli Miyuchad L'Shir. The Gra says a bell is a Kli Miyuchad L'Shir, Okay, then he goes on, he says, you should know there's another taina though. There's another taina against the Magen Avram. What's the other taina? That's called Miskavin. That's also called Miskavin. Why? Because the guy that put it on, so then he had das and you bought it for that reason. That's called miskavin. You know what you're doing. That is called miskavin. You do want it to happen and whatever. That's the fight against the Magen Avram and the Belzer Sifrei Torah. The bells, the ones that Sifrei Torah with the bells. Okay? Does. Okay. Nikudah. But let's say like this. So that's a fight. Okay. But let's say a person will come and he'll find something, taka, that is not a klei shir. Let's say he'll find something which is not a klei shir. And also, he's not being mekavin, and he's clearly not being mekavin, and he's also not stelling Sue to the kavana of the person that originally made it. What's that called in English? A rattle. It's also in Yiddish. The Ber Moshe writes a rattle, right? But it's a rattle. A rattle is something which is not a clay shear. It's a kliya miyuchad l'kol. And when I take the rattle and I just pick it up and I take it out, not idly, I take it up without idle. If you do it idle, it's not going to go. But if you take it like this, why am I doing it? Why am I taking it out or putting it in or doing whatever I'm doing with it? Stop doing it. Stop. The original kavana of the person when he made the rattle was that it should make noise when you move it. No. How do I know? The Mishnah Berurah says that's far. Where's the Mishnah Berurah say that's far? In the Shartzian, Moiradik. It's like the Shartzian. They used to have this ring. They had this ring. Where's the Shartzian? He has this ring that had in it a stone, and the stone would plop around. Where was the Shartzian? Here. In Sivkot in Zion. He says they had this ring. They had this ring, it's a long Shartzian. They had this ring that had a little stone. And they would make a noise. He said, yeah, that's a kliya miyuchad l'koil. He says, yeah, but when I take off the ring and I put it down, so he says that noise that gets made, memela, b'loy miskavin, he said the person that put in the stone and the ring, he never meant that when you're taking it off, it should make a noise. He doesn't care about that. He wanted it that when you're walking around holding the ring, so then it's going to knock and make noise. So Bazai, our rattle is the exact same thing. So you want to know, am I allowed to take a rattle and shake it in front of the child? Even if the child is crying? Too bad. Am I allowed to move around the rattle? For sure. Even less than that? No, I don't know if you should take on that. Can I take it out without caring, even though it's going to make a noise? Can I throw it to you? It's in the baby thing, and I'm holding the baby, and just throw it to throw it to your wife, and she catches it or whatever. So, but it's going to make noise for sure. The answer is mutar gomer. Mutar gomer. At common, you need the makim, right? Mutar gomer. What's the reason why? It's going to make a noise. But who cares? It's ein miskavin. And what ein miskavin? But secret. No, this is a different type of ein miskavin. Chazal only made the gzeira of a kliya miyuchad l'koil at common that I'm trying to make a koil. But if I'm not trying to make a koil, I'm not going to lose myself. And this is not a kliya. I said, b'zoi, it's mutar gomer. Good? Clearness. Doesn't make a difference. That's the same thing with the inbol. This is the ring of the Mishnah Berurah, and he says you could take it out, even though you're going to make noise with it, because you're einoi miskavin, nifla ad le'me'oid. What? No, the rattle you have in your house is not a kliya miyuchad l'shir. You want to know if you have your samba, what are those things called? I call them samba rambas. What are those things called? What? I'm right? Oh, I got it right. See, you guys always say, I think of all these words, right? No, the samba rambas he's talking about. So if you have a samba ramba, then it's a kliya miyuchad l'shir, fine, because you were miyachid it to make it for musical sounds. But the regular rattle is not. So the one last shaila, we still have to touch tomorrow. The one last shaila is we have to know, but now, can I take it and give it to the kid and let him play with it? That's the only shaila we didn't deal with it, okay? Good? Clear? Clear, okay. I'm coming inside. I'm coming upstairs. So. Rattle is huh? Rattle is not. What? What's tomorrow? There's no games. Of course, there's no games. Wave it down. Where's the baby? Hi, Shafsi. Wow, that's a pretty impressive spirit beard. Where's the baby? What? Let me just turn this off. Bye, guys. Yeah, I think so.